Welcome everyone. Again, my name is Malcolm Ross and this is the Appian 18.1 product announcement webinar. Today's webinar, we're going to be covering all the features and new release capabilities of the Appian platform in version 18.1. Of course, if you didn't know, 18 stands for the year of the release and 1 stands for the first release of the year. We expect all of our customers to be receiving 18.2, 18.3, and 18.4 in the quarterly updates each quarter this year. So look forward to continuing product updates and webinars throughout the entire year as we get ready to announce and release those new versions of Appian. But let's dive into 18.1. 18.1 is scheduled for release GA on February 23rd. Of course, if you'd like to download that, you'll be able to download that on Friday the 23rd. If you're an on-premise customer, you can manage your own installation of that new version of Appian. But of course, if you're a cloud customer, expect to see notifications from the Appian Cloud team around scheduling your specific Appian Cloud update to the 18.1 platform around that same date. So for today's webinar, we'll be covering the user, designer, and administrator features included in 18.1. To kick off, let's go straight into the end-user capabilities. And to start this, we're really excited to announce a new and powerful capability with the Appian SAIL platform for embedding web content. So the new SAIL component, called the Web Content Component, will be released as a preview edition inside 18.1, with the hopes of releasing this in a final GA version in a later release this year. So specifically what this allows you to do is embed web content. So if I have a specific, say, Google map, web page, any other content I have from the general World Wide Web I want to embed, I can specify the source, define whether I want to show a border, and also define the height, as well as alt text for 508 and screen reading capabilities. So it is important to know that this is released in a preview edition of the Appian SAIL architecture. And also there's a limitation that this does work only with Google Chrome and Firefox currently. We are making sure that we optimize the memory utilization on all the different browsers. So as we drive towards a GA version of this release, expect to see that supported on all browsers later this year. So Google Chrome and Firefox, as we see example right here, will embed nicely that content in line. When you are using a Microsoft Edge, IE11, or Safari browser, the user will be presented a link to the content instead of embedding the content directly. Let's take a look at a few examples. Of course, here you can have an interactive Google map that actually receives new inputs. So since the field itself, the source field for the web content, can be driven by a business rule, I can actually have interactions between the actual overall SAIL content and which web page I actually drive to. That can be dynamically updated as I change content inside the page. Another possible example here is like an investigation case management solution, where I want to embed maybe reference to specific posts or content throughout the World Wide Web inside of my overall web page example. So here I see external web content associated with this case, and a specific reference to the Samsung device on Android Central. And another good example is maybe you use Google Docs or other online document editing tools. And now you can say, review that document and embed document editing tools directly inside the overall SAIL experience. So here's an example of me reviewing the Appian 18.1 Ready Developer 1 blog post announcing this product release. Well, let's take a look at this overall though, and see maybe some examples inside my 18.1 environment. So as I pop into 18.1, let's go into my interfaces, and let's first just go to that web content component. So here we see the example of embedding a Google Map environment. Now, if you're familiar with embedding Google Maps have a specific embed URL with an API key that you need to use in order to embed that. So as I come inside of here, I can go ahead and say type 123 Main Street. And now as I define that address, I'll get instantaneous updates in my Google Map environment. If I want to refine this further, well, I didn't specify the city or the state. Let's go to Fairfax, Virginia. And now I see specific directions to that location inside my geographic locale. So of course, it's a nice example of how you can start to use web content component to add more richness to your overall SAIL experience by embedding maps, map overlays, and passing content from the Appian SAIL architecture through the source URL to the Appian environment. If I want to see how this is configured, if I go to my web content view, I can see that I have a web content configuration, all standard up top, but then I have the source location, which have it being generated by a dynamic URL. I have alternate text. The alternate text is the text that will be shown if the user cannot see the web content. So important to know that. that this text is what will be shown, say, if they're coming in from Safari or coming in from a mobile device as well, which we'll talk about a little later. You have the standard conditional visibility, and then you also have the configuration of the height of the content I want to display, such as short, medium, or tall. Important to know that some embed pages, like this embedded Google Maps, adjust nicely to whatever content I have inside the environment. But if I were to change this to, say, another site, to say appianworld.com or appian.com, it's important to know that there will be a relatively fixed size, short, medium, or tall on the specific height, vertical height of that web content. And then finally, I have an option to show that inside of a border control. So if I go back, I can see it highlights it subtly inside of a border to maybe distinguish that web content a little bit more. Let's go and do another example here, say web content with an embedded Google Doc instead. So another great use case example, maybe I have a task to, say, review a document. Now I can embed those videos, documents, PowerPoints, whatever I want directly inside of here using a web-based content editor like Google Docs, or embedding the document reference directly as well. Of course, it can work inside the SAML component. And if I want to adjust this web content field, so let's go ahead and say adjust this. You can see I have it hard-coded that URL. Let's go ahead and just change this and say I want to go to Appian.com, just like this. And now I can quickly adjust that URL to go to whatever page I want. Important to also know that some pages do not allow embedding. So I think one good example of this is google.com. So if I just reference google.com, you'll notice that Google does not allow itself to be embedded, and therefore just a blank screen will be shown instead of the content itself. Important to know if content is actually embeddable or not before using the web content component with it. So let's go on. So that's the web content component. Again, going to be released in preview edition right now, but the preview edition, of course, we hope to get into GA version, hopefully in the next release, if not as soon as possible, of course. We have a number of other UI updates to the overall Appian SAIL architecture. So first, with the rich text component, we allow for accent styling, which is the coloring of text. So the accent style allows you to, say, choose an alternative color for a specific text by applying the accent color. If you're not familiar with the accent color, this is a branding option available inside Tempo or Sites. So you can configure the accent color. That will control things like section headers. It will control the milestone component, the progress bar component, to have a specific hexadecimal color apply an accent to your overall look and feel. And I can also have that accent color applied to specific rich text items. Inside of this, with rich text, we also allow for configuring the link style. The link style can allow for inline link style, which will display an underscore, as you see this example with the fine art, audio, and video, to bring more emphasis that this is a link instead of just accented information, as well as a standalone link style, so displayed without an underscore, to maybe reference specific links, but you didn't want to have the underscore line emphasize it over and over again. Not necessary here because it's more discreetly defined as a list of links in the UI design. We also now include the library of rich text icons that were previously available and continue to be available in the sites configuration, as well as the action configuration for related actions, are now available as general icon usage inside of rich text. So you'll see there's a new SAIL component called the rich text icon, which is used within the rich text display field. And it has a number of configurations. Of course, the first is which icon I want to apply. As you can see on the right-hand side, if I'm inside Design View, I have a nice picker of the entire icon library, or we can reference our documentation for the specific icon names. You can apply these to be a standard small, medium, or large size, and of course, to make sure that we are 508 compliant and screen reading compliant, you can also apply an alt text and caption parameter for screen readers to understand. For those people who are disabled or blind, need to understand what these icons represent. Of course, also, there's a color control. This color control actually allows you to specify the specific hexadecimal code of the color. So if you choose the hex code configuration here on the overall environment on the right, you'll notice that I get a nice color wheel picker to very specifically define my exact color I want, or I can just type in a specific hexadecimal color. You can also apply the standard color controls that we have for rich text, such as the accent, positive, negative, and secondary controls, and of course with the standard controls. And then finally, you can also apply the link style control on top of this. Next, we have a new layout control for Appian Sail, which is the side-by-side layout. The side-by-side layout allows you to select specific items, individual items, as opposed to an array of items in a column that are going to be aligned together very tightly with very granular width controls. So now you can see that there's this new sail component, this side-by-side layout. Within side-by-side layout, I have an array of items, a side-by-side item, which are going to be defined inside a specific row. Each one of those items has, well, which component do I want to embed, such as a text field, paragraph field, rich text, as well as a width control, the 1x, 2x, and up to 10x. Those width controls are going to be proportional. So if I say, like in this example, it looks like I have a rich text icon right here, which is that people icon. Then I have a first name and last name. So this might have been, I defined a 1x, 4x, and 4x, meaning that the total value is 9x. If I divide 4 by 9, which is about like, what, 45% or so, then that's going to be 45%, 45%, and say about 10% in a rough estimation here in percentages. So you get the idea that it's going to add up the total widths and then take a percentage of the proportion that I define. So you can play with those to make sure it matches your specific style you want. You can also have alignment on vertical, so I can say top align, middle, or bottom align to adjust the content to maybe match the overall style more evenly. And then next we have adjustable column widths. So the column control, as opposed to the side-by-side layout, which has already existed, of course, in the column control, allows you to also now have more granular width controls in this narrow, medium, or wide configuration. Auto is what you have today, which is an auto distribution. It'll fill up whatever remaining space. And of course, in today's 17.4 and earlier, column widths evenly space out. Now you can say, I want to have a specific column at a narrow width. I want to have another one at a medium and another one at a wide width, and maybe another one at auto to fill up the space. First, let's open up that side-by-side layout. And this is actually going to show us a number of different configurations here at once. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in some information. Let's say I'm going to grab my user, Philip Sanchez. Let's populate his information here. And let's take a look at the first configuration here, which is inside this box layout, I have a side-by-side control. So go ahead and select my side-by-side layout right there. Now, as you can see, I actually have 4 elements inside of here. So if I go ahead to my view, my side-by-side layout has these 4 side-by-side items. The first one being a rich text, the next one being a text field, and text field. Now this, of course, is a great example of where you would use this to create more data density. I want to capture a first name, middle initial, and last name, so that middle initial value, I only need to capture a single character value, so I don't need a wide space. Let's go ahead and shrink that up a lot more. If I go into my side-by-side item, I can see my rich text configuration. The rich text configuration then has that rich text icon, and then here I see the icon picker for it. So if I want to configure that specific rich text icon, let's say I want to have a darken image instead, I can then choose the alternative image. I can define a link property, the link style with that, and of course I can also possibly choose a custom color. So if I come inside of here, maybe go to my color wheel or maybe a specific color control, let's go ahead and say just make that red. And now I have that color control to be my red rich text style instead, or I can just define, of course, the hexadecimal color. Then finally I have that small, if I want to make a small subtle icon, medium, or large size. These are nice scalable vector graphics or SVGs, so you can have complete control over the color and those nice preset values for controlling the size of it, or just make it say a standard size, which is that small size. That would be the default. So let's go ahead to the right-hand side now. So here we see another similar control where I have that side-by-side item. Let's go ahead to my item control here, go to my side-by-side layouts. And let's go ahead and navigate here. So I found that side-by-side item. Again, I have, instead of an image or a rich text, I have an image control right there. You can see that image control uses the new fit capability introduced in the last year, which allows me to have a adjusting size of the image inside of there. And of course, next to it, I have a rich text control with individual rich text icons. So basically 2 elements inside of there. If I go ahead to see how that's laid out, again, side-by-side layout, a list of items, and then I have my 2 side-by-side items, each defining specifically the area I want to use. Let's go to that side-by-side item control and see what happens if I adjust the size. So right now that's set to 1x right now in the set relative width. Let's go ahead and just see what happens if I adjust that to 5x. You can see that I can adjust the size of that column, and of course, since I'm using the fit control for the image, it is filling up the space to match whatever I need. So again, you have that control over the overall layout just like this to control the overall kind of look and feel of your individual spaces. Great features. Again, that'll give you more control, granular control over the look and feel of all your UI designs now in Appian SAIL. Going on, next we have the keeping your sort on export. So if you use in 17.4, we introduced the export to Microsoft Excel record lists. Now if you apply sorts on those specific record lists, when you hit export, the sort will also be preserved inside the Microsoft Excel export as well. So get a view, exactly what I saw inside record lists has now been exported to Microsoft Excel. Users also can now crop their cover photos. So if you're familiar with cover photos, this is inside the profile page of each individual user. Inside the profile page, you can see that there's a user photo, and of course there's a background photo, which is what we call the cover photo. We introduced cropping of the user photo earlier in 2017, and now if I upload a cover photo, I can zoom in, I can crop to the specific size I want, and then apply that image as I wish inside my background cover. We also now allow for custom related action names and descriptions. So this allows you to not have to rely on the process model name or have a singular name for defining custom related action names for a record. So when you're inside the record type configuration, as I see right here, you're going to see a new option on the far right called Use Expression. Here I have an example of, say, rule bang Google Translate. So I have an integration rule that's going to call Google Translate. It's going to take the value of the text update customer, say the source is English, and target the output to be the target user locale of the login user. So it's going to convert the text automatically using Google Translate to a language that's of the native language of the person currently logged in. So a great example of where you might choose to use and apply internationalization in custom-related action names. So if you see how this is going to work, of course, as a reminder, related actions are on the record page of any individual record. It's inside that record page, you see the summary, and then the far right, you see related actions, and then these are those related action names: update customer, new order, new request. You can configure those based on a rule expression, nicely accommodating multiple languages for a single action. Finally, we have update time zones. So this simply is a simple update. Some of those more obscure time zones that have more obscure daylight savings observances and time zone offsets have been updated inside the time zone configuration of Appian. The only reason to be aware of this is if you had to apply any rule logic to maybe do some adjustment to accommodate an incorrect time zone calculation, you might want to take a look at those time zones, and you most likely do not need to apply those rule configurations anymore. Some of those subtle changes of how time zones are calculated, keeping track of every single location in the entire world, have now been updated in the time zone reference library. Now going on, let's cover the designer features with Appian 18.1 as well. And the very first one is going to be the Blue Prism application. So for those of you who have been using the Blue Prism application, it's been available off the application marketplace for the past year. And prior, it used to use a plugin. So in order to call a Blue Prism bot, we had a plugin that you're able to deploy, a cloud-enabled plugin, to your Appian Cloud site. That has now been updated to use the integration designer object. So no longer does it require the plugin. Simply upload this application or download the application from the application marketplace. You have an integration from Appian to Blue Prism using the integration designer. No plugins anymore, as well as example interfaces and process models. The Blue Prism Bot Management app also is going to allow you to see what bots are currently running, what types of work they're currently scheduled to do, all being fetched from the Blue Prism platform using web service APIs and the integration designer into the Appian system. We also included an interface designer update for redoing an action. For those of you who caught the 17.4 webinar, might remember that we introduced the undo action, which means that as you're configuring things inside an interface, you can undo, as I'm doing right now in this screenshot, and then I'm going to redo those. So you now have both forwards and backwards doing and undoing. So of course there is a hotkey for this. It is your standard undo redo action, which is going to be Control-Shift-Z for Windows or Command-Shift-Z for Mac users. Also with the Interface Designer, we introduce Form Factor Preview. So Form Factor Preview actually allows me to view the mobile phone and tablet perspective of an individual interface before I publish it and while I'm developing it. So very important concept here, that not only is it giving me a preview of what it looks like, but it's actually going to apply any mobile unique logic. For example, the web content component that we introduced earlier actually does not render in line for mobile phones. It's going to provide a link. So when I show that, it's going to best approximate exactly what it's going to look like using the unique mobile characteristics of the native Appian platform. Also, it's going to be aware of which current sale components are supported in mobile, and again, give you a rendering that's most accurately like the actual mobile experience. So with that as well, we introduced another function set, which is the isNativePhone and isNativeTablet. So these are two helper functions that designers can use to introduce mobile awareness inside their Appian applications. This simply, when applied, allows the returns a Boolean value of true or false if the user is currently using a native phone or native tablet app, which is, when I say native phone, they're using the native Appian client, not a web browser. It'll return true, and then a designer can use that for conditional adjusting the interface based on if they're using a native mobile app experience. So let's take a look at maybe an example here. We'll take a look at a screenshot, then we'll go over to a demo. The first, of course, is an example of that Google Map interface using the web content component. If you caught before when I talked about Google Maps, I referenced that Google Maps has a unique embedding URL, which is for embedding, and a different URL for just viewing Google Maps in a content. Now, since I cannot embed that content inside the native app because it doesn't allow it, I can use these native mobile functions to say isNativePhone or isNativeTablet in my condition here, and then offer two different URLs based on if they're browsing this from a native phone or from a web browser. Let's take a look at what this looks like in action. Let's go into, let's say, that web content component again. Here we go. So here's my desktop view of this environment. I have that nicely embedded Google Map now. If I want to change this to a tablet, I can see it's going to preserve that column layout constructor. But again, that driving directions now has been rendered to a link instead of embedding the content. If I go over to a phone view instead, it's going to see adjusting all the columns into a single list rather than the multi-column experience. And again, going to adjust that to a specific link. If I click on this, I can see that's actually going to open up. The link is directly to Google Maps with that specific link context. So this is how I'd want to deliver that same driving experience or that same map experience on a mobile device. I want to have that conditional link. So if I come inside of here, see how that conditional link is defined. Again, here I have that web content component. I have the if condition. The if condition has an or condition, and it says or is native phone or is native tablet. So if either of those are true, then I'm going to offer two different URLs. One you can see is Google Maps embed. One is Google Maps directly. So again, this one's going to be for the mobile phone. This one's going to be for the desktop experience. If I look at the same environment, here it is in desktop, again rendered using that mobile app or using that desktop experience. Now let's take a look at the side-by-side layout. Now, side-by-side layout, like some of our other layout controls, has not yet been supported in the mobile experience, but you can still see the content. Now, this section gives me a preview of exactly what it's going to look like for the mobile device. So let's go ahead and say, look at my phone view. When I go to my phone view, I can see now that that side-by-side layout now has been rendered to a single column view. So we don't yet support a true laying out of side-by-side inside that. Of course, you can also see the box layout also does not have the box styling. So when this is updated later inside the year, we will apply updates to better match also the styles, but you still have the same functional behavior. It does introduce a concept where if you notice that mobile behavior is a bit different, I can then use the isNativePhone or isNativeTablet to offer some different interfaces for those mobile users rather than the desktop users. So let's pop back over. Next, we have the serving documents through web APIs. So serving documents through web APIs allows you to create direct URLs or web APIs for downloading or viewing documents inside the system. As you may be aware, Appian already has a /docs/the doc ID URL for downloading docs, but it does give you a lot of control, as well as it doesn't allow you to embed from that URL string. This is going to allow you to embed from that URL string if you want to, say, embed inside a web content component, or maybe embed inside the video component. So to make this really easy, we have a simple builder inside of here. So let's go back over here and let's just create a new web API. Let's call this doc downloader. I'm gonna do a get action, call it doc download, hit create. So again, you can simply choose a template to begin your web API. You have that nice library templates, and you're going to notice a new one right here called the document download template. Now that's all I need to do. It's already set up that entire template for me, and I can specify, say, a specific URL. I happen to remember this specific item, and this is going to be a video component I want to download. So one thing to note when you are using the document downloader template is that it does include a extension whitelist parameter inside the rule configuration. So if I want to expand that, like for this example, I want to allow it to include MP4s, I'm going to add that extension as a supported extension type for allowing document download. As I go ahead and hit save, I can go ahead and hit, say, click on it, and there's my video embedded just like that. So if you've put two and two together yet, you can say, well, if I can have nicely embedded video like this, well, what can I use locally hosted video files now inside the video field component? And the answer to that is yes. So let's take a look at that video from Appian example. Here again, I have my video component field. I can again play that video right here. So I have the video field defined. So I expand the video field inside of here. I can go ahead and say, click on my videos list, the web video, click on the source configuration, and can see that the source is actually coming from a web API source inside my system right here, that web API inside my existing environment. So again, nicely done that you can use now video streaming from the Appian local document management system to host those files and then offer them inside the environment. One other mention of the document downloader, if you want to add attachments, the template also includes logic for attachment notification. So attachment simply is going to change the behavior. If I offer the word attachment as a parameter and say the value is going to be true, you can see that the URL parameter has been adjusted here to say that question mark attachment equals true. When I click on this link instead, you can see instead of embedding it, it's going to actually trigger a download action right here. So it's actually going to tell me to download the file. Important if you're trying to distribute a file to someone and maybe in an email link or something like this, you want to use that attachment equals true configuration to trigger a download rather than just embed it inside of a web view to view the content. So also with web APIs, we've added to the availability of authentication structures for basic authentication. Before, Appian only provided preemptive authentication for web APIs. Now, preemptive authentication means that the authentication was bundled with the request. So when I want to say download that document via web API, in that request, I also need to pass the credentials to actually download that document. So everything's going to be authenticated. Now, Appian also offers a challenge for authentication when a web API is requested. So what this means is when a requesting system makes a request, and it's not authenticated, Appian will send a challenge response back saying challenging for the authentication credentials, and then the requesting system is going to request by passing the authentication parameter. So it's a multi-step process that's also now supported for basic authentication. Also inside the Appian Designer, you're going to notice a number of updates, starting with the more object actions. The toolbar for available actions has gotten very long, and now we have a number of common actions which will be universally available from the more environment, so that more dropdown. This includes accessing a design object's properties, version history, creating a new version of the object, or downloading the object, or viewing its documentation. Along with that, we also allow for inside process instances to navigate to the parent process from a process instance. So quickly open up a parent process by simply going to the File menu of a running process instance. You'll see a new option there called Open Parent Process, and that will kick open that parent process from that sub-process instance. We also allow you to force delete quick apps. So deletion is only available to system administrators and allows for deletion of the app in all design objects inside that quick app container. So what this means is if I have a quick app, maybe I built one really quickly and I realize I don't want it, I just want to clear from my system, you can log in as a system admin account and choose that delete action. Now this is important to check out here. So let's take a look at an example here where I built. We have a support ticket management application right here. Inside support ticket management, I have this delete me function. So I've actually modified, you can see this is all the standard support ticket management stuff, STM, record filter, STM, support ticket management. But I went and extended this quick app and add my own custom function, a little expression here called delete me. Now that delete me actually is used across other artifacts as well. So I can see delete me is also in my 18.1 examples. So very important to know before taking on this universal delete action is that when I go to the Quick Apps Designer, if I choose this and choose to delete now, it's going to give me this warning that I cannot undo this. It will permanently delete all content. And just also be aware that this does get rid of everything associated with that Quick App. So you might also have a cloud database or a data store. You can see inside my table structure that I now have the Quick App STM. So I have a number of these tables created for my Quick App. Let's go ahead and trigger this delete now. That's going to, and it's gone. That application is gone now. If I refresh my table view, it's actually dropped all the tables from my relational database. As well, it's also deleted all my application contents, as well as that individual object delete me is gone. So it is going to drop and delete everything inside the application container. So important to know, if you extended the Quick App and started to include in that Quick App shared rules, you want to do individual deletes on those objects instead of a bulk delete action. But with that, we also made individual deletes a lot easier. And by the way, also with Quick Apps, we also have a minor update for table names. Any table names generated across an Oracle database will now follow proper Oracle naming conventions with uppercase table names. Bulk delete is going to allow you to basically have a multi-selection and delete all those actions at once. So again, if I had a Quick App that's going to essentially be maybe adjusted with other shared objects, instead of doing that universal delete or that all delete, I want to go in here, check all the objects that are maybe unique to that Quick App, or take out those individual elements and delete them like this using a bulk delete action. It's going to save a lot of time, of course, performing that bulk delete now. Next, we have a new quick access to global object search. So you're going to access this in both Mac and Windows using a control space command. By using control space, you can open up a search box with quick access to any design objects in the entire system. So to see this in action, again, you're going to go over here. Let's say I'm just in the general Appian Designer. You'll also see a new button here, which is that search button right here, search objects, or I can just hit control space and get to that search environment. As I go ahead and say, type the word order, there's all my elements. Let's say I want new order. It's a very quick search across all the names of the objects. And then I can go ahead and open up those individual objects. Now this does do only a name search. So if I'm searching by ID, UID, or inside expressions, I want to use the regular search that's already available. The quick search though is going to be based on the name of the objects to quickly find specific references. With that as well, you can also now search any design object by its ID. Now this is allowed to quickly find design objects by local ID as well as UUID. So prior to 18.1, we had the searching by Universal Unique Identifier or UUID already, but now you can type in, say, a local ID as such the 16093 number to find maybe specific documents or specific elements by their local ID value. We also allow for search expressions in process reports. So now search within expression and process reports from the designers. So this simply means that process reports can include expression logic to maybe adjust data before displaying it inside of a report view. Now all the interior content of those expressions is also now available to the search engine for doing a deep search of all the content logic. And going along with process reports, we also allow for impact analysis for process reports. So this simply allows you to say, select any process report, do an impact analysis, and traverse maybe any interfaces, design objects, rule objects that might be referencing that process report across the entire system. Also, we've introduced user management inside the Appian Designer as well as the Appian console. Now you're going to notice that this is largely just a user listing. If I need to do more advanced activities such as deactivating, reactivating a user, or resetting their password, that is still going to be reserved inside the admin console. But this does give me quick access, say as a designer, to look at maybe like all my test accounts or user library as I'm testing information inside the overall environment. You can also navigate the processes from actions and record types. So this simply means that as I configure a related action, an action on a application or a related action on a record type, you have those process model references. I can simply click on those process model references, have quick access to the underlying process that's supporting that action. So simplifies the overall navigation throughout the design experience. Next, we have the document management updates. So we're happy to announce that we fully removed document management from the old design experience, and now all document management functions that were available to you before in the old design experience are now available in the new one. So you have folder navigation inside of here. You can upload bulk content by uploading a zip file. You can download bulk content by downloading all in a zip package as well. You can also see all version history of individual content, properties of content, control security of knowledge centers, folders, all that inside the new design experience. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of this. If I go back to my 18.1 examples, let's go ahead to my folder structures and go to my 18.1 knowledge center here. So you can see it's important to know that as you start to navigate folder structures, you're going to notice this gear icon right here. Whenever I go to the gear icon, you're going to see those advanced configurations, such as looking at a knowledge center properties, what's the ID, UID, all inside of there. What is also the security configuration of the knowledge center, who has access to it, as well as impact analysis, moving it, downloading an entire knowledge center at once, or of course navigating to its folders just by clicking on the folders directly inside the system. If I need to say upload or download a file, I can go through the structure right here. I can say maybe I want to check a number of elements just like this, and I could do say a more download. That's going to create a zip package for me of those remaining contents inside the system. Also, if I go into individual content, such as say this 18.1 example, this one has a preview of the content itself. So if we can preview it, we will display say image previews right in line here to actually give a quick view of what the content is, and then of course access to download that file right here. If I want to see every user that's modified this content, I can go into its view history and see all users who've actually downloaded that content as well, just as I had before in the prior one, and prior design experience. Now with that as well, we're also happy to introduce that you also have group hierarchy navigation, and all group management now is controlled inside the design experience. So this allows me to create groups, not only create groups, but control their membership rules, add members, remove members. I can also add groups of members in one action inside the environment as well. So if we go back over here, let's go ahead and look at, say, some group structures inside my 18.1 example. Actually, let's go to my sample application instead. So here I have some specific sample applications. I'll go into, say, my CMF users. I can say CMF users has a number of subgroups like CMF sales. I can see this has a membership rule. It's driving membership. If I want to change that rule, I can go ahead and click on it and have all the access for configuring rule membership rules right here. And of course, just like the folder structure, if I want to navigate around, I can see its properties right here, controlling, say, group security, group properties, all from the group security gear icon right there. Now the same applies for process model folders as well. So process model folders, again, gear icon's going to apply. I have that breadcrumb chain at the top, and I can navigate to my all my folder structures inside the environment. So you might be asking, with all these movements over, what is left in /designer? So if you say, let's go over to my /designer experience, you can see that I only have home, processes, and a few remaining objects in the system tab inside of here. So this is slowly going away. All this functionality will be migrated to the new design experience over subsequent releases in 2018. Last few slides for Designer, we have a Fitnesse testing update. So if we're using Fitnesse for integration testing with Selenium WebDriver, we now support 17.4 and 18.1 with this 18.1 release, as well as if you developed any scripts in 17.3, all those will migrate seamlessly to the Fitnesse architecture in 17.4 and 18.1 as well, using this 18.1 update. We also did some minor improvements on conflict detection. So this allows you to see who modified the modified date and which user modified information when I perform a package inspection on the application. So if I have another developer who sent me an application saying, please go ahead and import this to update your app, and I have a conflict detection, it's going to notify me of that conflict detection, exactly which developer has created that conflict. And then finally for Designer, we have the persistent patches. So this simply means that Appian will now persist patch contents if the designer navigates away. So this allows you to easily assemble patches over time. I don't need to do it in one action. I can over time add things to my patch. I can go to lunch, log out my system, come back later. It'll preserve all those patch contents. Patches, though, are unique for each individual designer. So if I have one user, Amy Lee, another user, James Baker, they're both building patches of the same application. Those patches will be different for each user inside the system as they develop their own personal patch for a specific design object. Now, speaking of patches, let's go into the administrator section, talk a little bit about Appian Data Server. So Appian Data Server is a new data engine that's going to be used for patch management. You'll notice in the architecture of the Appian platform that there are new start and stop scripts for the Appian Data Server. There's new logs, monitoring scripts, and an updated Appian architecture diagram. As mentioned, though, the new Appian Data Server is only used for one thing, patch management. That's it. So all those patches I'm building, they're going to be stored inside the Appian Data Server. But Appian Data Server, we should expect to see evolve over time throughout 2018 and going into 2019. So simply stay tuned for updates. Also, for those customers in the United Kingdom, we now have Appian Cloud High Availability available inside the UK. This simply means that we have now 3 redundant data centers available for those availability zones. If one of those entire data centers goes offline, we can instantly fail over to another availability zone. This includes a 15-minute RPO contract, RTO saying for recovery time objective, which is the amount of time it takes to recover to full operations. Recovery point objective is recovering all the data. So all the data is back up and running exactly where you were before. No more, so that's the maximum time is 15 minutes. Actual failover is near instantaneous. If you are interested in Appian Cloud HA, please do reach out to your account executive to discuss how we can upgrade your cloud environment to the HA configuration. We also have a new option for traffic security for all communication to Appian Cloud. This now allows for dual communication channels over both IPsec VPN as well as TLS HBS communication. So prior to 18.1, you simply chose one or the other. I want all communication to go over VPN, or I want all communication to go over HBS. Now you do have the choice, if you so choose, to simply have both channels enabled. If you would like to support this, one of the use cases we've seen is support a Blue Prism environment calling Appian, having that TLS available for Blue Prism, while IPsec VPN is used for all their clients. If you'd like to consider this configuration, again, simply please reach out to the Appian Cloud team. They'd be happy to answer your questions. This is by request only to have this specific network security configuration applied to your Appian Cloud. And lastly, with Appian Cloud, we also have an update for the MySQL platform. The version 5.1.44 JDBC driver is now in use. So there are some minor feature updates. If you'd like to explore those, simply go to that link provided, dev.mysql.com, and you'll notice the JDBC driver from MySQL 5.1.4.4. Also, we're removing support from MySQL 5.6.x. So if you're using that for either an on-premise or a cloud instance connectivity, we do encourage you to upgrade that MySQL instance to a newer supported version. Also, some minor updates to the admin console. We now have user photo management inside the admin console. So as I go to configure a user, you'll notice that I can directly now upload the user's image. I can crop, make it look nice, and then apply it for that user profile as well. Then additionally, inside the admin console, some of our customers might still be using the SOAP-based web services for initiating a process model. We call these the legacy web services. If you are using any web service endpoints for initiating a process, we do highly encourage you to use the Web API design object instead of the legacy SOAP-based web services. But if you want to preserve usage of the SOAP-based web services, you do still have access to this. It is still supported. To configure that, simply go to the admin console, look for new configuration, legacy web services, and you'll see now that old design experience for adding your services, all those SOAP services, and mapping it to a specific process model. Then next, if you have a need for higher encryption for SAML authentication, Appian now supports sending and receiving encrypted SAML assertions up to AES 256-bit encryption. So if you have a specific design requirement or authentication requirement for this SAML configuration, again, feel free to reach out to Appian Cloud about how to configure this, or Appian support team. our documentation for our 18.1 release will be available on February 23rd for this as well. Thank you all for joining the Appian 18.1 product announcement webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any additional questions, feel free to follow up on appiancommunity.com. And of course, to close out, I am looking forward to seeing everyone at Appian World. If you haven't registered already, I encourage you to go to appianworld.com to register. We'll be hosted on April 23rd to 25th at the Fontainebleau Hotel, Miami Beach. So look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, everyone.